Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave, and I'm joined here with my co host. His name is Greg. And today we are doing an episode, and that's
hmm
what we chose to do with our lives on a Sunday night.
Yeah, tough to come in joyful and then sort of mention the episode that we're going to talk about today.
Total downer,
Yeah.
but important and
Yep.
something that, is kind of timely, but it's probably been timely for a while now.
Unfortunately, I think so. So, and Dave, I just want to mention that this isn't going to be a true crime episode. And I know just saying that about half the listeners just drop off. But it's not going to be something where we discuss the graphic details and the graphic nature and the intricate details of a school shooting. Obviously,
Right.
we're going to be talking about school shootings here. I think the aim for us today is to understand, at least for me, why this is happening. And of course, like you're mentioning or alluding to, it's inspired by for us here in Providence, Rhode Island, like a very local school shooting at a Ivy League college, right?
Right.
So that whole this thing doesn't happen here mentality really it kind of stuck with me because I didn't really know I was a part of that, but I definitely was. I was like, man, that stuff happens like a lot, but just why
I,
is Rhode Island the kind of place that that stuff doesn't happen? I think about that with natural disasters. I think about that with a
yeah,
lot of things.
that's actually a great point that I actually didn't think about either. Is I was having the thought after it happened, but then I was like exactly what you just said. I didn't really realize I was part of that. It doesn't have things like that don't happen here.
Uh-huh.
But you're 100% right. It just never felt like we were big enough, important enough. It just feels like the things like that don't happen in such a small state. You feel like you know everything feels so familiar about that setting to everybody. I've said that 1,000 times, but it's literally a setting that if you have spent any time in Rhode Island, you've walked on or around that campus.
Yeah, you have, and it's beautiful, and it's old, and it's it felt safe, right?
And
And
it's
it's funny.
connected
That's like part
to
of this thing.
yeah, it's connected
Mm,
to Thayer Street, which is a huge college and actually just like a late night, street that people, the restaurants and shops and bars and all that stuff. It's
it's
like a
wild.
place where all of us have been at some point to hang out and spend time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to mention something else too about this topic. It's again, we don't have all the answers or arguably any answers, right? So we're just here to talk earnestly and honestly as possible. We don't want to offend anybody, and we're just going to kind of try to talk this thing out at some points, right? Because I know that Dave and I, we come at things from different angles sometimes, and I don't think that like in this specific topic it's going to be anything wildly different.
Oh,
But
it
I
might
think
be.
sometimes our process of working through this stuff, you know what I mean? Like we have to like bounce around different ideas and things like that. I
I'm coming
think.
at it from a totally different angle. Whatever your point is, I'm going for opposite. That's me today. Yes.
I think it was smart to really get an expert. It's like there's this guy Harold Schwartz, and he's sort of an expert in psychology in the field in getting in the mind of a mass shooter. And this there's a few quotes here, long quotes, but they're from an article of his, and I hope that you would read one of these, and
Oh,
I'll read
I
another.
have to read something.
Yeah. Yeah, just because there's two of them and they're kind of long and I just think that they bring up sort of the essence of this. So it's like let's attack this from a sort of academic point of view and then get into our own sort of thoughts about things.
Sure.
So
Or
what do you think?
or I have to read it because you didn't want to read both of them. Got it.
That's right.
Okay. That's fine as well. All right. So here's the quote. We know that virtually all school shootings, let me start that over.
It's
We
okay.
know that virtually all mass school shooters return to a school they attended to wreak their havoc. For most, these schools were places of failure, and for many, of isolation, bullying, rejection, and ostracism. The shootings may well reflect a vindication of the shooter's sense of injustice and victimization and an assertion through overwhelming force of dominance over their victimizers. And certainly for the shooters who felt unseen in their school settings, they ensured their place in the minds of the community that paid them little mind as students.
Yeah, you can kind it kind of paints a picture of the stereotype, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And it's really sort of like a weak point of view by the well, obviously by the shooters because it's on very unfair terms. And I think a scary truth is that we all have this capacity to be dangerous,
sure.
but strength in we've had this conversation before is using this capacity appropriately and not allowing again something that we've talked about over and over again ad nauseum for our thoughts and feelings and even unfair treatment to determine our behavior. Like what have we said to people you know where like maybe someone has abused someone else because they were abused as a child. It's like, all right, well maybe that's explaining your behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. And to me these are the ultimate anti-heroes. It's so important for us, Dave. You and I, in our work, we've talked about heroes. One of my favorite episodes is the hero's journey episode because it's such an important framework to be a competent human being, to view the world as a hero, right? And that just means to do what you know is right, no matter what happens or has happened to you. And this is like people doing the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. You know, but
But
in not to justify or anything of that nature, but these are individuals who, we've often talked about. The truth isn't, there's often no set truth, right? It's what we all interpret and how we all experience the world. For these individuals, unfortunately, this is their truth. What they're interpreting, how they're viewing their experiences, their interactions, they're viewing it as, nobody sees me, everybody walks all over me, whatever their narrative is. This is how they're
mhm.
viewing it, and this is what is scary is so many of these individuals, it makes you wonder, could this have been prevented if somebody was able to speak with them at some point and help them see that, like, you are seen, you will get through this. This is not your end all be all. This is a stepping stone to something else to come. And even if this is challenging, like, what can you glean, what can you take away from this experience that will make you a stronger, better person in the future? None of that is able to happen because instead they turn to an action that does not allow them to undo or recreate any narrative except for the narrative they've now created because now they're taking control.
So two things there. Yes, I absolutely agree with the idea that could there be some intervention? Could a lot of this be avoided? And the answer is, yeah, I believe that. The issue is societally, we take on this idea that mental health is so important to, like, that's the message pushed out by government and business and everything else. Like, mental health is so important. Yet, just yesterday, I had two people not be able to have sessions who really needed it. And the reasons
Right.
was because it's that time of year
Insurance
where your
reasons. Yep.
deductible and you're going to have to meet that deductible. So you want to come see me, it's going to cost you $135 that you don't have right after Christmas. So it's like, yes, this is a mental health issue. And yes, mental health is important and should be taken seriously, but we're not. We're still not. We're still not taking it seriously. And
the
the other,
can let
no, go
me
ahead,
let me
Dave.
just ask you this though, and I've been hearing people talk about this quite a bit, and not to sound conspiracy theory-ish at all, this idea that if the government wants
Hmm.
us to continue to be sick because then you know that's how money goes into things like pharmaceuticals and all this stuff.
Hmm.
So it's like, we create these systems that keep people feeling sick, feeling, like there's a disconnect of them being able to get the help they really need because it just is it's this perpetual circle and a cycle that will just feels like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
It does start to feel like the reality though. It really is. Like, it feels like that started off as a conspiracy that I always was like, I don't know, I'm sure there's reasons for the things that are in place, but as we go along and as all these situations happen, it's like we just talk about the same things over and over and nothing really changes ever.
Yeah, what benefit does the psychotropic medications and the pharmaceutical companies have for people to get better? it doesn't support them at all. And maybe that's a talk for another time, but you're right. There doesn't seem to be, and even us in our own way continuing to talk about things like depression and everything. Like sometimes it should be more do therapy instead of talk therapy. It's like we've talked about it, we're thinking about it, and maybe that's keeping you here. Let's do something about it. What are you doing? And
Right.
that's where the behavioral part comes in, I think.
Yeah.
But so, and the other side of that too, Dave, you're mentioning the intervention part, but the other part is too is like this culture of self-importance, and again that domination of like I'm so important that the way I feel deserves to be displayed, and like these people believe that their feelings are so important, kind of coupled with this loss of reverence for humanity, which is connected to the internet, and we'll talk about that later. But it's like you're so important that you can make such a big statement and you don't even care the like whose lives it's going to affect as long as you feel vindicated. Like that word vindicated
Yeah.
gets thrown around, and it's like vindicated.
There
I mean, what
there's
about
another word I feel also almost becomes interchangeable here. Vengeance.
yeah.
And I feel as though our society over time has started to idolize villains more than we idolize heroes.
Hmm.
Characters like the Joker have become the person that everybody looks up to versus the Batman. It's how many people see themselves in a character like that and see like those actions that happen in film, and feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I wish I could do something like that. I wish I and I was going to mention something about that actually being kind of real life at one point for us, and I'll get to that later. But that, yeah, characters like that, it just feels like people look up to them, and that can be really dangerous when it's in the wrong person's hands, right? Like seeing that seeing something like that really becomes impressionable on certain people when they feel like the world is against them or treats them unfairly, and they just want to make their statement on the world.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. It's something that I think we can get into, and I think it's related to the genesis of the internet, and we can talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
later. But like this idea that I guess it's like doing something for you versus doing something for the greater good.
Yeah, it's that thing we talked about before where celebrity used to be like military figures, political
Yeah.
heroes,
Lo
and
Loss of
now,
reference for like
right,
old school values.
yeah, we've
Right? It's that
lost that,
old
and
school
we've
values thing. Like all those things that have kind of, you know, we've become a very secular society, and in a lot of ways, that's fine. But in a lot of ways, it's like, I don't know, like some of those religions, pick whichever one. I mean, well, I don't pick whichever one, but like pick most, and then
yeah,
it's like these got these built-in sort of values that don't do any harm. In fact, it's like I'm going to be good because if there's something bigger than me out there. And that just makes you live in a different way. But we'll get into all that. First, I want to like kind of get back to these quotes because there's one more kind of big one. And I think it kind of touches on all the things we've been talking about here. And this is Howard Schwartz again, not me. But quote, there is another essential element of human nature nestling in the most primitive aspects of the human brain that must be considered. This element is the very significant capacity for hatred, brutality, and savage murder that is ubiquitous part of being human. This capacity is constrained by the development of positive identifications and healthy attachments, the development of conscious and moral code, and the experiences and acculturation throughout life that support development of empathy and pro-social behavior. So just that in and of its sense, in and of itself, right? Like we do have this capacity to hurt and to hate and to be brutal, and all that is kind of like has its role if necessary. Maybe more in the past than now, but you're supposed to be sort of, I don't know, you're supposed to develop out of that. You're supposed to be socialized out of that or, learn through story. I think maybe that's something that's missing here, right? Learn through story and through leadership and through role models what the proper sort of framework is, right? And there is a framework. There's like these we've talked about in a past episode. Yeah, I want to say years ago, Dave. We talked about guardrails that used to be up that used to people used to like kind of like stray away from the beaten path. Like even us as kids, we would play on the maybe smoke some cigarettes or smoke some weed or God forbid even do like some mushrooms or something. Like, you know what I mean? But you bounce off those guardrails and be like, that's going a little bit too far. That's like built into us. But this society is like everything kind of goes. Everything's kind of okay. And when it's okay to be like you're good no matter what, I think that's a good message, but it's also like kind of not true. Like you
Right.
can't just do
So
anything and be good.
so it sounds like there's like kind of two things happening there. It's that
Yeah.
idea of like when we're parented and brought up and within school and everything, that idea that people are too soft on people, that like they don't give the feedback that sometimes is needed. They don't give the direct discipline sometimes, and that creates an idea that like you're never wrong, everything's always okay. It's like kind of that soft parenting issue that maybe is going a little too far in the world these days. and
Yeah.
then and then there's the idea of like everything go like people just do anything these days. Like there's never that idea like, oh, maybe this is too far.
Yeah, and there's also this thing too, like we can get into sort of our own thoughts here. But remember in concept creep, we talked about there's so many definitions of mental disorders that like if you speak one into existence, like then people are going to meet the diagnostic criteria for that, right? It's almost like when we were like even when we were younger, but even going back any further, people didn't have the language for this kind of thing. Like this didn't until, for me, Columbine, and we're not going to get into we're not going to get into like details, but that was my first sort of memory of anything like this. And there hadn't been, it was new. It was,
Mm-hmm.
too, and I don't know if anything had happened before that. I think they said something in the 60s, if I was reading correctly. But
Yeah,
like,
kind of go from 66 to present when they talk about it, but that includes most mass shootings, not just specifically school shootings.
yeah, so like it introduced this thing into the consciousness, right? So now that's a thing. And so now that that's a thing, it opens that availability for it to happen over and over and over again. So it's like without these strict moral framework or societal norm, and like, maybe that stuff was there for a reason. Like,
Yeah.
what's next? Like, anytime like someone does something, it just kind of creates this possibility. And maybe it has stuff to do. Like, I saw, like, I read ahead in your notes when you're talking about like pop culture and stuff like that, but we'll get into that. Um, like I don't know, is there something to be said for once something happens, it's inevitable that it's going to happen again?
I think what I interpreted from Columbine
Yeah.
was two things. The way it was portrayed, we wanted to know so much about those individuals, right? Those two individuals. What could ever make somebody commit those acts, right? So we spent so much time, delving into their world. Are they psychopaths? Were they ill? What was wrong with them? Did video games create this? Was it the music they were listening to? It was the bullying, it was they were isolated, they were the poor parenting. There was all these things. We learned so much about them. They were glorified almost, right?
Hmm.
Because and I think people who connected with their story saw that. They saw the way they were treated afterwards, and I think that brought a lot of ideas to people's minds of like, wow, if that can be them, why can't that be me? I've had that similar
There's a
experience.
narcissism and anti-hero sort of thing going, right?
100%. And
Where
that's
it's like,
like I said with the Joker, it's almost like that kind of character. It's like, let me do this thing that will make people see me and understand that like that I am struggling. And I think it really didn't help the way they were portrayed. It was like the all black
hmm,
like fatigues, they came in, and
trench coat mafia.
it almost made them look, and this is horrible to say, and I this is not meant to be offensive at all. It almost made them look cool.
Yeah.
Like they came
No,
in with
talk through
like
it, Dave.
they
Like, you know
came
what I
in with
mean?
assault weapons. They had like they just looked so like a video, like the video game that kids want to like be, those characters that kids want to be, and they see that, and like I can only imagine it didn't have that impact on me, but I can imagine that there was a number of individuals that saw that and actually were like, oh man, that's kind of awesome.
somebody got that bully from me. You know what I mean? Somebody did that thing for me.
Those
And it's
kids that were
like
bullied now look like they are the ones in charge.
what they forget is that, there's this great quote. I don't know where I heard it. Certainly not my own, but heroes and villains have the same origin story, and it's very true.
Yeah.
Like you talked about Batman and the Joker.
Yeah.
Batman doesn't he wakes up in the morning
He's a
and
dork,
he doesn't
isn't
care
he?
what happened to him. He doesn't care that
Yeah.
his day's gonna suck. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
The fact that all this difficulty has happened to him is what makes him the hero.
Right.
Without it, he's nothing,
Sure.
right? You can do that. You can sort of, take the difficulty and like be forged from it and not be, you know, beaten down from it, not turn into something you were never supposed to be. Like this, but you're right though. There's some sort of like infamy to it, and as you're saying that, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I can imagine someone who and bullying's horrible. It's like this complicated thing because people are bullied. A child of mine gets bullied, and like I hate the people that do that, but it's like God forbid, like, I don't know. It's just one of those things where you can imagine someone sitting there and being like, oh, like those bullies deserved it. And it's like, but no, it's like so much more complicated than that. They're human beings. They have a future. They have the potential to change. And you've taken that from them. You've taken that from their parents. You've traumatized the people around them. You've shattered a
Yeah.
society. Like it's just awful on so many levels.
There is a thing I think that has to happen in order for someone to be able to commit an act in this nature. And they have to somehow stop viewing other people in their life as humans. They have to dehumanize them, right? Because they could not go in there with an ounce of empathy, an ounce of, like sensitivity towards other humans and still be able to do the things that they've done. And I think that's like almost that's another aspect of it. I think that starts to intrigue people, and like for again, it's like if this falls into the wrong hands, then it's really scary to think what could happen when someone sees that and is like, oh, if they can do that, I think I could do it too. Because I've also, felt how they're feeling and I sympathize with how they're feeling. The whole copycat thing.
You make an incredibly good point here. There's So this is the dehumanizing thing. Like the Oscar Wilde has this great quote and it says aesthetics are greater than ethics. So like the way things look are more important than the way things actually are. And there's nothing more that's more prevalent in than the internet. We like have begun to care more about how we appear versus what we actually are. And you can kind of see how Columbine, I almost think of it as like opening Pandora's, I mean, even, to play on words here, like lunchbox, right? We're talking about schools. Like this is like the internet and Columbine are sort of kind of kicking off and gaining popularity around the same time. And there's this biochemistry, Dave, like when we're together, I don't mean it like that, but when people are together and you actually share a genuine like laugh or you share a genuine smile or even a cry, there's something that happens there between two human beings that cannot be sort of duplicated
Right.
over the internet. So that we think that we're more connected, but the internet sort of robbed something from us. This under the guise of more connectivity. The insidious truth is that we are less connected and less authentic than we've ever been, starting then and continuing on. So this loss of reverence, especially for like human life, is because there's the beginning with the lack of real
uh
human connection.
This is it's so weird that we're having this conversation right now. I've had this conversation numerous times in the past few weeks with parents who are struggling with their kids during break right now, right? Their kids are always connected to each other, but it's all online. And that creates multiple different things, like this ability to say whatever they want to say to each other because they're not seeing it like face to face, things you would
Yep.
never say to another person. You're totally bold enough to say, like, if you're on a speaker, playing a video game with somebody or you're typing it or whatever, they're always talking to each other, but yet they still feel lonely because like you
Uh-huh.
said, it's that in-person energy that you can't duplicate via online. And I get it, there's so many people who have online relationships, and I'm not saying anything bad about online relationships. You want to date someone
But
online,
long
that's
distance
totally
relationships are
fine.
tough for a reason.
Yeah,
That's the truth.
you
Long distance
have to
relationships are tough for
realize
a
it
reason.
is.
There's something missing.
There
Why
is
do you want to be
something
together?
different. Yes, there is something different about an online relationship versus an in-person one. There is something
Yeah.
missing, an element that's missing to it. with that being said, if that's what someone chooses to do, that's fine. But for kids, I think it's so interesting because yeah, they start to learn their social skills through these interactions that are not real interactions in a way, right? They're
No.
missing something and they allow for this, this ability to just like be mean and say crazy things and feel like that's okay. And the other
They're
part is
self-important,
yes. And
right?
then
On the internet, self-important, they're narcissistic, which is sort of the same thing,
yep.
and they completely lack empathy because you don't see the effects.
And 100%, you don't see the effects. And here's the other crazy thing that happens when they're not playing their games, they don't know what to do with themselves anymore because they don't now they like have no they're not used to not being connected. So if you ever take a kid away from all their stuff, there's a period of time where they don't know what to do with themselves. Then you'll
Mhm.
notice actually they'll be improved if you withhold the stuff for a certain period of time. They will figure it out because that's what we all had to do. But like initially they will struggle.
And here's the thing. People, so that's you're saying like even if we say that kind of thing started around this time going back and obviously school shootings have gone nothing but gone up. But what you're talking about there is we've stopped allowing our kids to suffer, which is like when you never allow them to suffer and deal with any adversity, then like when they actually you can't protect them from it
Yeah.
forever. Maybe you can protect them from it in the house, but you can't protect them from that forever. Now it happens to them in school. Now it happens to them somewhere else, and they don't know how to
And
deal
they
with it. They want
don't
it to
know how to
stop,
deal.
and sometimes
Yes.
it gets to be extreme.
Let people fail. Let kids fail. Let adults fail. You can't learn until you fail. Parents
Mhm.
support people who try to like prevent everything. Don't allow people to ever experience failure or loss. You're not doing any favors. That person will never learn how to deal with situations. The other thing,
You're
we
stealing
think
something from them.
absolutely. And then back to the Columbine thing, this whole thing with the internet, now it even there's another element that's been added when around the time of Columbine. Now we're all in the time of chat rooms and
Mhm.
online, internet groups and exactly what we're talking about here. Say being able to say things to people and relate to people about horrible things that maybe you wouldn't talk about in person with just anybody. And suddenly it feels like, oh, other people understand me. Other people feel this way. Other people are, or they're saying really crazy, messed up things to you. And it's quite the opposite experience. And it's like, I'm not even safe here. So
Yeah,
there's so many different elements that got added in the late
but
90s that weren't present prior.
something fascinating that you're making me think of when you're talking about these chat rooms is it creates you can find this group of people, right? It creates these echo chambers where the thought that would have been corrected. So like say like in a normal sort of societal situation,
Yeah.
somebody might say something that's sort of leaning towards violence or danger or like whatever, and the rest of the group might be like, well, dude, like what's going on there? Like it's sort of like a self-correcting
Yep.
like utilitarian thing where like someone says something off the cuff and then other people sort of like bring them back around. It's like an evolutionary trait, right? You're sort of shamed for it. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Um, but the reality is in these chat rooms and these forums, people can all agree and talk each other up and say, "Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I totally agree." And there's no pushback at all. And that creates a very dangerous situation too. That lack of challenging creates a very dangerous situation. And then we find ourselves in this polarization, this state of polarization, where like you're all good or all evil. That's it. There's only two types of people in the world. They can't learn
Yep.
anything from anybody else. There's people that are completely wrong, and there's people that are completely right, and that's it. And that is not real.
Right. Right.
It's just not.
It
Like
really
we
isn't.
warn people of black and white thinking all the time. You just can't you can't feel that you know everything because it's that scary. The scariest people in the world are the people who think they know everything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many elements to this that really point to, we want to blame music, we want to blame video games, we want to blame movies, internet.
Hmm.
Internet has ruined so much of our side. It's been a blessing and a curse, right?
Right.
We've advanced in so many ways. We're able to do things we could never do in the past, but in so many ways it's hurt us socially and as a society that it's scary to think about, what else could be introduced that could have that kind of impact on us. And you know what I'm talking about.
This whole thing has created like all these things that we're talking about has created these like beings who feel their emotions are completely true and how they feel is more important than what is collectively good. We talked about that. And they feel that I am important enough to make a statement and uses people's lives to do it. And
Yeah.
that's
And I think it's even scarier or more dangerous when we're talking about young people, right? Because we're talking about teens. We're talking, for the most part, we're talking about or early 20s, people who don't have a ton of life experience. And we all remember when you were a teen or you know in your early years, you feel like your world's a bubble. You don't really understand exactly how big the world is and how little your problems are in the capacity of the larger scheme of the world. And that's a dangerous time, because if you feel like
Mhm.
the only things that matter are this little bubble that you exist in, you know, your school is like, your school feels so small, and it just feels like everything that happens there is the most important thing. This person broke up with this person, this, you know, this person did this, oh my god, I can't believe it. And you know, everything just feels like it matters so much.
That's so true. I remember having like a pimple and
Yeah.
being like, I would give anything to not have to go to school with this pimple on my forehead.
I
You know
used
what I
to
mean?
get
Like everything, like
Oh
it's
yeah,
over for me
I used to get
if I go to
poison
school with this
ivy.
shirt or this
Yeah.
haircut or it's
Yeah.
over.
I used to get poison ivy on my face, and I swear I used to think I looked like Two-Face. I probably did. I don't know, but I remember being devastated one time when I got it. And I said, if I do this, if I get this one more time, that's it for me. Like, and I was like serious in my head, like I can't ever go back. This is humiliating. I can never get past this. It just felt like everything was so real
Yep.
and intense. And now imagine having an experience where you feel like the world is against you. You're in this little, like, you know, pressure cooker, and you just feel like everybody wants, you know, thinks the worst of you, and just is out to get you every day. I guess
Yeah.
that must be a really tough feeling.
Yeah. Like, when we were growing up, like, I don't know, there used to be like, I don't know, and I have to admit, this is my own sort of like bias. It's like beaten into me, and it hasn't, in some ways it's been okay. In some ways it hasn't served me great. But like, you being like weak was not okay. And I just feel like that message is like kind of wrong. But like, I don't know. There's something like we've gotten these like these words and these ideas like mixed up, like what it means to be weak and what it means to be strong. Like the strong people should help the. You should never be hurting the weaker people, right? They should always be trying to lift up. And it's just such a complicated. We've gotten so far from like the stories we used to read,
Yeah.
like these great stories of like knights and I don't know, like I'm thinking of Princess Bride and just like these old school values that used to I mean if you looked up what like a knight's sort of like the what it meant to be chivalrous and like look up all this crap that was their values and you live by that, you'd probably and everyone did, it'd be pretty good world,
Oh, I mean, it would
right?
definitely be a different society. You know, here's the thing though, like I love those kids that help others and take, you know, try to protect their peers. I love those kids. But at the same time, I also understand that like kids are going to be kids, and some kids are
I
going to
know,
be pricks. Some kids
I know,
are going to be the ones who unfortunately get targeted for a while, and like that's just the way it is in
I
as
know,
kids
and sometimes
adolescents.
and the truth is for these young kids who are getting bullied, if any of them are listening, and Dave, you can attest to this, right? The bullies in school, just wait because it doesn't work out for them. I mean, it
No,
really doesn't. Like, you can't go
they
on
have a
living life a certain way
change.
and it all kind of comes up roses. The people who are, we're sort of like the nerdy ones or the picked on ones, in my experience, they're the ones that seem to be doing pretty good now.
Yeah. I
Not the
mean,
ones that were awful.
I feel like it's truly a mixed bag. Honestly, like you never
I
know.
know that's not a
Sometimes you
just
run into
world.
someone. Yeah, sometimes you run into some people and you're like, "Oh, wow, you're exactly who you used to be." And
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, "Wow, that person, good for them. They're, you know, they've advanced."
But isn't that a bad thing? Like, isn't like, hey, you're exactly what you used to be. Isn't that sort of like, that's too
I
bad.
it's so funny though, because like, and not to be cocky, but like I was fine in high school. Like I feel like I had a
Mhm.
pretty okay high school experience. I never really got bullied. I was kind of friendly with everybody, but I was also a little shy. So, I didn't really put myself out there too much. But I know I remember kids who were bullied, and I remember kids who everybody thought were, who were the bullies. Um, but I'll never forget this one kid. Like when I ran into him at college, he made a very clear choice that he wanted to be a different person when he got to college. Like there was nothing wrong with him in high school. He was just, I think
Yeah.
he just wanted to, he was a little too preppy for maybe for his own liking, and he wanted to give himself an edge. And I saw him in college, and suddenly he has a chain on, and he's like talking different. And I'm like, what is going on here? I was like, but that's great, man. Reinvent yourself if you want to. Like
Mhm.
that's life. You're not this one thing. And for these kids that, who are bullied and like feel like this is they can't take it anymore. I wish they could just see that. Like at some point you'll be in a different setting, and if you want to reinvent yourself, then dude, go for it, please.
Yeah, or if you like who you are, that's great too, because you will
And
find your people.
you will
Just
find your
work.
people. Get
You
to
know what I
that
mean?
Ivy
Just
League
do what you
school, and
enjoy.
they will be a lot like you probably. And like,
Yes.
yeah, that's the thing. And Greg, we we have the amazing opportunity to talk with people from all walks of life, all different types of abilities and personalities and cultures. And we see just exactly what you just said. We see it. Like people find their community,
Hmm.
and the people who don't, there's people out there who will help them try to find community. Like I spend part of my, of our role in people's lives is also helping them find community. Like I spend time with people trying to identify, like, hey, is there places you can go to meet people, or what are you into, and let me help you try to find maybe, groups that are doing that stuff or whatever. Like there's help out there for that.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is like you're going through a tough spot in your life. It's like we've even maybe even mentioned this before. If you're driving over a bridge and it gets foggy, you don't just stop driving. You keep
Right.
going, and maybe it sucks for a little while, but you keep going, and then the fog clears, and things are okay. Like that's life sometimes. It really is. It really is. Like you're gonna get the whole human experience, and unfortunately, part of that is being uncomfortable sometimes, and for
Yeah.
periods of time. But like honestly, like it always it's cyclical. Things are good, things are bad, things are good, things are bad. It's just the way it goes.
One of the things that always kind of was in my head, and I don't know if you remember this, there was talks that perhaps another reason why the Columbine individuals were bullied was because of their sexuality. Like people might have insinuated that they were gay. Do you remember that at all? Do you remember hearing any of that?
I didn't remember that. I always get it. I kind of get that crew mixed up with the West Memphis Three. Sort of like similar, like blaming the music, Marilyn Manson kind of like
Yeah.
vibe to it.
I can't remember
Um,
if they said that they were bullied because of that, or if there were thoughts that maybe they had started to have a relationship with each other in some way, or if that's all just you know people speculating and coming up with their own conclusions. But I could see how that could be another layer added at the time, especially late 90s. You think about what high school experiences were like, and if there was anything with someone's that sexuality that was a little different, like that was something that people would get heavily bullied about.
oh yeah,
It's
like
you
we've come
like
a long way with that.
I was just going to say, you would like to think in today's day and age that, you know, there's less of that, but yet it still feels like you're hearing about people being bullied nonstop.
Mm.
And maybe bullying is a whole separate episode. And I don't know that it's everything in this subject, but it is a big part of this subject. Because I mean, that is
Or
something
like maybe
you're
there's a part of
often.
it too that's like bullying. Like it used to look, bullying's been around since humans were put together in groups,
Yeah.
right? It's sort of like a natural part of human existence, and you can call it whatever you want. Um, but I think there's an element of like the criteria has changed for bullying, and I think that we have less like you were talking about with parents before, since we are less with our children, all of us really, we don't allow them to like deal with as much difficulty like we used to when we were kids. Like we would be bored, or I slept. I remember laying on top of my covers in my tidy whities because we didn't have an air conditioner. Guess what? My kids fucking they sleep with comforters in the summertime, right? Because they've got, it's like that little bit of suffering, and suffering is such a bad word, but you know what I mean? Like difficulty, that's without difficulty in university, you cannot create character. You just need it,
Yeah.
right? And we're taking that away from people. And so like they're these characterless, sort of weak's the wrong word, but like they can't handle any adversity. They're not like sort of forged in any kind of strength. They crumble under any difficulty, and then we're surprised. We laugh at values like courage and strength and all that. All that shit doesn't matter anymore. And the anti-heroes are the new heroes. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
why is this happening? It's like, well, come on, we've come a long way from like what is considered like the ideal like person, and maybe we kind of have some like I don't know, maybe we need to change who we look up to a little bit. Or maybe we need some better leaders. Maybe we just need a lot. We need a lot.
Yeah.
Society, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
I
I
have
wish
so
we could
many
like
thoughts
wrap
about
this.
this. I know, and I have so many thoughts about this, and it probably we wouldn't be able to continue our episode now if we got into a deeper discussion on this because there are so many thoughts about just the way that we handle things with individuals, the way that the bullying thing is like I get it. There's like another layer to it that we didn't have to deal with where like you go home and because of that issue we talked about earlier about people constantly being connected, the bullying never ends for some individuals, right? It's like you go home and then suddenly you're getting bullied online, you're getting bullied in, your video games, you're getting bullied on text message. And we didn't really deal with that. I get that element
Mm,
of it. But yes, it feels like we're so sensitive to any type of bullying that we forget that like also it's part of growing up. It's part of
yes.
people learning how to interact with each other, learning about each other. Those
Navigating shitty people is a part of life.
right.
I'm
And
sorry, like
even
you when
and
you get
even
to
good
when you get to
people
go when you go
uh,
work.
yeah. Good people have probably been bullies when they were kids because they had to learn that that's a
Mhm.
really bad way of interacting with someone and like this you see the response you get or you figure it out like it's both sides of it, it's the bully and the person being bullied that learned something at some point. um but yeah, I mean we have zero tolerance for it, which I guess is good, but in a way it also really makes
I,
it
I
so
I guess
people
I
don't
guess
know how
another thing
to
too. If
grow.
you look back to when we were kids, like Three Ninjas, um, different like sort of like shows like that or movies like that. I mean, any kind of from the 80s, early 90s, and I think maybe that's it. The common sort of knowledge to deal with the bully was to gather the courage somehow through some kind of like formative experience to confront the bully.
Yeah.
And to confront the bully with your own sort of merit and not in this
Right.
insidious way where like you sort of circumvent the whole bully and you just kind of hurt everyone around them that even represents anything that they represent or even they're just completely innocent. So it's like we've taken and then you end up in most cases either losing your own life by the police or taking your own life because I feel like this quick snap back to reality where it's like what have I done?
Right.
Where like you face the bully and you go through that difficulty and that's hard thing that you've maybe like trained for, right?
Yeah.
If you're watching like an 80s martial arts movie or something. But like all kidding aside, like that was the way to do it and that's the way to admire yourself and then change through difficulty. Not like change, there's a right way to change and there's a wrong way to change. And it's like who do you want to become? And then we get back to the heroes and villains of the same origin story thing. Like that's it. Are you going to do it like in a way you admire, or like a way with courage, or are you going to do it with cowardice? That's like
Sure.
ultimately the issue.
So, Greg, I'd like to shift a little bit, and I kind of
We
want to talk.
better.
I kind of want to talk about. So we're spending a lot of time talking about the perpetrators, but I also want to
Mm,
talk about how this has impacted society, students, parents, everybody. And one of the things that I thought about after this recent incident that happened at Brown University, because there were two students there who, at this point now, this is their second school shooting they've been involved with. Um, that which is insane. There was one student who was from lived in California. She was part of the Uvalde high school shooting,
hmm
and then transfers to Brown University because she thought it was a quiet, safe place, and then is part of this event as well. And she, to think of that, that's even possible that someone could be involved in that is just mind-boggling. It,
Yeah.
but this thought about this is how people are growing up now, and the classroom, like you have to do the, what do you call it, the school shooter like alarms or whatever procedures, like they practice what to do. The amount of times we're hearing about it, students are seeing it, they're talking about it. This is a generation of hypervigilance now. They are now walking around, and this is like their reality, that this could happen in my school, this could happen at any school, this could happen at any time. No school is too big, no school is too small at this point. That's an crazy thing to think about. Just
It really
individuals
is.
walking around with PTSD, and it's a whole generation. It's not just one individual. It's not isolated to just one person. It's group experiences. I was thinking about this. I mentioned the Joker thing, and I actually thought about something really specific with that. Do you remember that movie theater shooting? It was around the
Yep.
time that the Batman sequel came out. An individual, I think it was in Denver, walked into a theater dressed as the Joker, and there was a shooting there. And I remember that weekend. Obviously, Denver is quite a distance from here, but I remember being afraid to go to the
Hmm.
movies, thinking that other people, now there's going to be copycat shootings like that. Is it safe? And I remember making the decision at some point, feeling safe enough. All right, I guess I'll go. But even while there, kind of thinking like, oh, there's my exits. Like,
Yeah.
what would I
Yeah.
do in that situation? I remember very vividly that feeling, and I think the reason why I remember it so vividly is because it wasn't super common, right? It's not something you think about all the time. Something happened that triggered that thought, and it was a whole experience. Now, think about this. It's not a movie theater. It's a place you have to go because legally you're expected to go every single day, and you're a kid, right? So you have to go to school after one of these shootings happens. You don't have a choice. You have to go to school. And then think about this element. It's happening so frequently that now it really totally feels like this could definitely happen in my school. And there's also now a level of normalcy around it. It's like
Yeah. Which is
we're
the worst part.
preparing for it. We're expecting that it could happen. So this is the procedure of what to do. We got, the door locks and all this stuff. There's discussions happening all the time. That's such a crazy development over, however many years this has all been well, actually probably from, like, if you think maybe Columbine to now, how it has developed and how our society has shaped the way they view these and had to experience this. And the unfortunate thing with the school shootings is the people who are mostly affected by this are going to continue and will continue are kids. It's always going to be kids, right? That's not something we're worrying about. We're worrying about our kids, worrying about kids we care about, but we're not worried about ourselves in those situations unless you're a teacher.
Yeah. Wow.
I know it's a lot to unpack right there, right?
Yeah. Which is like really sad, like making like, me think of like my own kids in there like practicing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
I know kids who, have big emotional reactions when they have to practice these things. It's scary to them. I know I work with a 11-year-old who, whenever one of these drills happen, he ends up having this huge emotional meltdown, or acts out to get himself removed from school that day. And it's
It is
just it's
scary.
it's very scary, and he doesn't know how to process it, so it comes out in like negative behavior. um and I can only imagine how many other kids that experience is like that for. But it's also sad to think about kids who just, it's this is just every day, like this is just normal.
It's just a normal thing. So speaking of like it's normal, what like I guess it makes sense to do the statistics on this stuff.
Sure.
I can say one thing that is 94% male. I mean,
That's
that's just fact.
Yeah.
Sucks,
So
you
from
know?
1966 to present, there have been 509 mass shootings, not just school shootings, right? The majority of them have been in workplaces, but schools are actually the second most
Hmm.
common. So there's been 141 in workplaces, 112 in school shootings, so not far behind. In 2025, there were at least 159 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 53 deaths and 148 injuries nationally. Just to give you a little bit of a timeline of how the increase of these numbers have gone. So in 1966, we had 9 mass shootings. In 1988, we had 38. In 1999, which is the year of Columbine, we had 23.
Jeez.
In 2006, we had 59. So that's obviously a big jump. But then 2019, 124. 2023, one of the highest numbers, 352. 2024, 336. And actually this year, it was 233. So it was a decrease.
Good.
The majority of shootings are escalations of disputes. So they're not all, these planned mass, shootings the way that we see them in Columbine. Sometimes it is just like an escalation, a dispute in a parking lot, something like that. So 7 people died in school shootings this year, which was down from 18 last year and 21 the year before, and 40 in 2022. So 2022 was another rough year. So there's been studies obviously on all this, but
Yep.
some of the studies on the long lasting impact of these. So there's a new study that has found that prescription drugs to treat mental health conditions, including depression and anxiety, increased by over 25% among the youth living near fatal shootings. So just being near those shootings increased to 25%. 5.5 years later, the use of these medications remained high. So even 5 years later, like I talked about, a whole generation of hypervigilance, even 5 years later, they're still utilizing the same level of medications or being treated for the same issues in that way. A new study shows that school shootings continue affects students' mental health years later by showing that youth antidepressant has increased by 20% in 2 years following fatal school shootings. Prescriptions peaked 3.5 years after the shootings and then stayed elevated for another year and a half. So for some individuals, they might not get treatment or get help for some of the aftermath that they've experienced for even 3.5 years. But they obviously have been impacted enough where they felt the need to get treatment at some point. And students who experience a school shooting were less likely to graduate and be employed by their early 20s, quantifying the long term damage of gun violence. So, I mean, and that's a stat that's kind of like, I'm trying to remember what episode that was we were talking about. If it was, we were talking about, minorities who experience oppression, and we were talking about depression rates, and we were, kind of things that maybe sometimes don't feel like those are going to be linked correlations. They do. Depression impacts your ability to achieve. It impacts your ability to be motivated to move forward. So if you
Hmm.
think about all that, then yeah, those stats start to make sense. Those facts start to make sense. But also going back to that early statement I made about not wanting to be a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, if we're in the market for pharmaceuticals,
Oh my God, Dave,
they're
that is
on the
conspiracy.
they're on the boost. And that's
Yeah,
a
you know what's funny, Dave?
sad
Like earlier, you were
reality.
like, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but the government. As soon as you say like the government, it's like, well, yeah. But you know what's funny? Like, I can't. It's hard to disagree.
It's
There is like some insidious things going on here. I just can't obviously put my finger on it. And
I guess the thing that it feels the most obvious is we see how this is impacting people. We see the issues it's causing. We see that it's causing people to require far more medical assistance than if it didn't happen. And yet the responses feel minimal, or the support feels minimal for these individuals other than medication. So that, I guess, is where some of that thought comes from.
so we didn't solve any problems.
No,
But we
no.
we we put a lot of thoughts out there, and maybe if anything, we can just try to always come back to that thing that we've talked about in the past is just be someone you admire, whatever that
I
looks like.
just really quick, I do want to also touch on one last aspect of this, because I think the thing that sometimes is also missing in these conversations is, so it impacts the students, it impacts the obviously the people that are involved. It also impacts parents.
Oh my God.
And and Greg, I'm sure you could relate to this. I just wanted to kind of point out like how this impacts parents, so that if you are a parent that's ever experienced this or fears about this, or any and has even thought about it, these are things that you're probably experiencing and are normal thoughts for people like you. So some of the specific things beyond just worry could be lack of reassurance that you feel of closure due to no major changes in gun laws, or continue to feel it could happen again. Feelings of hopelessness, exposure to the news and stories of the situations just constantly happening, of and seeing parents who have tragically lost their children. It starts to somewhat feel real and like imaginable, versus just feeling like this thing that's happened that's so terrible. It starts to feel like that could be me, right? You start to
Hmm.
relate with the story because you're hearing it so much, and it's feeling closer and closer to home. And also that the sadness that your children can't have the normal childhood experiences that previous generations were able to, which is, I think, a lot of what Greg and I have been talking about this whole time, of like,
Yeah.
it's just different for kids now. And that's sad in so many ways. And I would not want to be growing up in today's world versus the world that I grew up in. I just, you know, wouldn't.
Me neither. Sadly.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, put that out there for all the parents who think about this stuff, who have that worry, that anxiety around these things. You're not alone. This is it's becoming a universal experience here, which is really sad, but also something that means people need to advocate and try to create change. And we all need to be doing a part in that.
Well said, Dave. As
Yeah.
usual.
Yeah. As usual.
Yeah, it's there's no real way to kind of like you can't wrap this up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, you know, we just all remain hopeful for a brighter sort of outlook on this kind of thing. This year, the numbers went down a little bit. Let's hope that we can continue that trend.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Okay. All
All
right.
right, buddy.
So obviously not a ton of laughs in this episode.
Nope.
Obviously not really an appropriate time for it, but hopefully next week we will talk about something a little lighter and maybe be able to return to laughter. We'll see.
Yeah, let's return to laughter
Okay. I don't even know what it will
for,
be, so we'll see.
let's do that. Cool beans.
All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you've joined our Patreon at this point. It is the place to be. So make sure you're on there. You get the video episodes, you get bonus episodes, which are going to be coming out almost every week now. We're just going to crank them out. So make sure you're
And you
on
can see
there.
where we actually live now.
Yeah, and you're gonna,
You see my
we're
basement?
dropping our backgrounds. This is my
Yeah.
spare room that is cluttered mess, so it's very dark in the background. But yeah, we're dropping the background so that we can get better quality video. That was impacting our videos in case people were noticing sometimes the poor quality. And yeah, maybe it'll just feel a little bit more real. So here we are.
Here we are.
See you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. See you later.